Hey everybody, it is Dawn with Crypt again. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today we are talking about a few different materials that you can use, that you get minis in basically. Brandy last week had asked a really good question and it just started me really thinking about it. She had asked if I treat the minis differently based on the material that they're in. Basically, do I have different tips or tricks for painting different ways? Do I use different techniques, anything like that? And really, it's all about the preparation of the mini and once they're prepared versus the different types. From that point on, painting is painting for me. So I thought I would just get a big group of different minis together and kind of go over how I prepare them for painting, and just in general play with them. So you can see on the little screen we've kind of got a rotation going of the different minis that I've got here. But I've got some that I've printed in resin. I've got some that I printed with PLA on a filament printer. I've got some from Reaper that are their normal plastic, and then I have some from Reaper that are that really hard plastic. And then I've got a couple of metal minis as well, and we can just kind of go over those and play around a little bit. So let's get started. So the first thing, I've got kind of a little spread here on the board in front of me where you can kind of see the different materials. This is my resin printed. This is just in the typical gray that I pretty much use for everything. It's my little Wolf Rider lady who's just a lot of fun. This is the Reaper, that harder plastic that I was referring to. It's still a little bit malleable, but not nearly as much so as their normal plastic, which is like this Chimera, where I can even just bend it without doing anything. This girl, if I can move her staff around, but I wouldn't move it too much. And then like her arm is not going anywhere. And then this is from Dark Sword, and I'm leaving her lay on her film here just because it's easier to see her that way. But you can see even in the packaging, it comes to me, when I received it, her sword is bent. But this is pewter, so it's very easy to manipulate it. And I left it bent on purpose so that I could show you straightening it out and just getting it nice and even, which I don't seem to be doing a very good job, but there we go. There we go. Her sword looks much better now. But just that simple. Even you can see little bits of metal on her base, and before I would paint anything here, I would go around and get those little bits off. Usually, a lot of these pieces I can kind of clean up with just tweezers because they're little pieces of slag is really all it is. And this one actually is fairly clean. Sometimes they'll have a ridge along here that will keep it from sitting flat on a base. So I might have to kind of shave that down with a file or something like that. But this one really seems like she's in pretty good condition. There is a little piece, you see it right there, of just this little extra piece of material that should not be there. But like I said, it comes off very simply. It's really easy to move it off of here. Like I said, it's just a pair of tweezers. I'm not even really putting any pressure, just simply bending it back and forth, and it comes right off. So for this mini, I would be ready to paint her, but I would want to clear or give her a primer coat because she is metal. Anything that I painted on her with just a regular, what if I paints? With just a regular mini Reaper paint or anything like that, is just, it may last for, a little while, but it's gonna peel off. I've got minis. My first metal one is flaking off. And then this one is the PLA that I printed on a filament printer, and you can see in here, I purposely didn't clean it up as good as I can, because I wanted to be able to show you guys. This is left over from the supports as it printed, because it goes around and around and builds this stack. And you can even see, you can probably hear it, my fingernail catching on those layer lines that it gets, but still, I mean, I've seen layer lines that have been hideous, but this thing is still really beautiful. And it's a zombie dragon, that's why its eyeball's falling out. But this is all leftover bits from supports. So a lot of people are used to buying a miniature from Reaper, and you're either going, or different companies, like I said, Dark Sword, this piece came completely assembled. This piece is Reaper and it came completely assembled, but you can see in here, I keep knocking my dragon head around. This is why he's on a post. You can see gaps where they've already pre-glued this in for me, but when I go to paint this, you're going to see that gap. So I want to fill that gap. And one of the things I use the most is, let's see if I can get this to focus up here, this Vallejo plastic putty. And it works really, really well. I really like that one. A lot of people use, what is it called? Yes, it's green stuff. Literally just green stuff. A lot of people will use that and it works really, really well. I like the way this has a nozzle, and basically all I do with this is, you can see I use it quite a bit, and this has lasted me forever. I just literally squish it in like this, and yes, it is a little messy. Hang on a second, I'm trying to...
Yeah, there you go. You weren't in the frame.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, I'll do another piece, but I'll do it again to fill more gaps. But you can see, and then basically all I do is use a Q-tip or a toothbrush, or not toothbrush, I'm sorry, I'm looking at a paintbrush, and just kind of smooth it over to where it falls in the gaps that it's, it just needs to flow like the, I'm looking for a tool. I can't find my toothpicks. It just needs to flow with the mini and not be a clump. But again, let me
move a little more towards the center.
My dragon head is in the way. There we go.
There you go.
That's better. My problem was I was trying to stay away from my dragon head, so I was really not holding it in frame. I'm sorry. So you can see over here I've got these really big gaps, and over here I've got these really big gaps, and I just literally squeeze it on there and kind of make a mess. And it looks really sloppy and it looks really messy, but it's one of those things, once you put the paint on there, if you've smoothed it down well enough and got it into the grooves of the mini, you'll never see it again. And see it now, it just looks nice and white right there. Now this obviously needs to dry. Usually I try to let this dry for probably at least an hour. Is preferably, I like to fill my gaps and then set it down and walk away for a while. One of the things I'll do sometimes, if I know I'm going to be sitting down to paint for a bunch of things, I'll sit down the day before and put things together, assemble them, and gap fill everything that I can gap fill. That would be a good case for this very large Reaper dragon, which is another thing that I want to show, is how to manipulate things that are flexible like this. Get all of his pieces. Because that's one of the things that a lot of people see, is when you buy a miniature from such, like Reaper, you open a big box and you've got all of these yummy pieces to glue together. Oh wait, nope, that's it. So there's my dragon. Now, the good thing about this, my minis are, I have so many minis out here, guys, I'm being attacked by them. The good thing about this is it actually makes it a lot of fun where you can take something that is like this and manipulate the wings to give them a different position, or manipulate the tail to put in at a different position so that it's not just this same dragon that everybody has. I mean, obviously when you paint it, you have your own little touch on it, and it's really fun and really cool. But one of the things that I really love to do is manipulate the wings and put them in a different position. So the first thing that I do, first thing I do is get a pot of water boiling, which my beautiful husband is watching for me. And then I simply hold the wings where they go, just kind of manipulating them in there. And I know it's not a great shot, but it's hard to get them in there. So that's what his wings are going to do if I just leave it as it was designed. But I love those dragons that they look like they use their paws to crawl. Oh, hi Jake, sorry, I just now noticed your message. Do you need to water it down, or can you just use it out of the tube? No, actually do not water it down. Straight out of the tube is how you want to use it every time. There is liquid green stuff that it's a lot thinner like this, but I wouldn't recommend watering it down at all. I think it fills gaps beautifully, just as it is. That is a great question. Sorry, I did not see that until just now. I'm not sure how long it's been up there. So basically I've got his wings in where they go, but I love those dragons that look like they're crawling on their wings. So usually what I like to do is kind of manipulate them down like this. So what I need to do is actually boil these for about 2 minutes. So I'm going to hand them off to my husband, who's going to dunk them. Really? They're not hot right now. You're such a dog. And now I have to keep talking. Such an ass. So tell me.
How long?
2 minutes, please. And while that is boiling, normally what I would do is while that's boiling, I would get my bucket of ice water ready, which I have already done before sitting down to start tonight. One of the things I do like about Reaper is you can just leave it sit for a minute, babe. They make it to where the inserts on these guys, they don't fit in any other way. Like these are both back legs, but it's not gonna go in the wrong place. So that's really convenient.
You said 2 minutes, right?
You'll see whenever you're boiling them. Jake says that next time he expects you to have big giant chemist gloves.
I'll work on that.
No. Actually, no, that would be funny. And it will make them 2 sizes too big just to make it funnier. But anyway, so you guys have completely derailed me. But that's okay. So no, I just like to get him basically put together, and that's not even the right leg. This is the right leg. Basically put together so that whenever I get the wings back, I can kind of hold the wings in place and make sure I'm manipulating them the way I want to. I'm not gluing these in yet or anything like that. Now that is another thing of I do not recommend gluing them together and then trying to manipulate it. It doesn't, I mean, if you're going to put something in boiling water, I wouldn't have super glue on it first.
Okay,
That's just
coming.
my impression. Okay, I need my water first before you bring them over.
Oh, okay.
And then there's his little head. So this part is not fun because I am literally going to put it in this ice bath. But in order to get it to keep the shape that I want, I'm going to have to put the shape that I want and then hold it in the water.
You want
And
both, right?
yes, please. And you will feel them harden back up in that water. And that's why we're doing ice water, is to take them from this malleable stage that they're in with the being boiled like this all the way to back to hard again. And I'll show you the difference between as soon as I get one.
Drop them in the water?
Nope, you have to hand them to me.
Ooh.
And they're not really like burning hot, but you can see this, they're just completely, whatever I want to do, I can do. So this one, we figured out could work really well like this. I'm going to set that one down. And then it's going to go in. And that's not fun because that is super cold. Oh, I hate that. I hate that. I hate that. I hate that. Oh, he hates it, my precious. He hates it. And I just want to hold it until I can feel it getting hard again, and then it's holding its shape. And there you go. So that is a manipulated wing, and it won't hurt it to sit in there anymore. But see, this one is still really flexible. And I just want to kind of curl that wing a little bit. And we'll go back in. See, I'm the one that needs the chemist gloves. That stings like a And you'll have to excuse my fingernails. I've been staining wood over the last couple of days, so I've kind of stained my hands a little. Hey Jake, from Jake, sorry, I've never gotten to actually see this part done. I always heard about it. Oh yeah. It's something that I have always really enjoyed doing. Oh my God, my fingers are stinging. Just to give any mini that I can really that personal touch, because realistically speaking, we have all these amazing sculptors out there that create these massive works of art, and I love them so much. And then I get this credit for, oh, look what I did. I splashed some paint on it and I made it look prettier. But I didn't. The sculptor did all this amazing work, and I think if I hand you $100 bill and you draw a smiley face on it, it's still a $100 bill. All right, they should be good and hard, and they're going to hold their shape now. So being able to take something, here, you want to take this, sweetheart? Being able to take something that somebody else created and add my own little touch, it's fun. So basically, now this dragon, get his tail on the, ow, spiky tail. Let's see if I can get this. Oops. Sometimes they're harder to get back in place. But now, to me, that just creates, there we go. That just creates more natural motion. It just creates more fluidity in the dragon itself. Let me hold him up because I really love this stance. So I'm going to put him on the big screen here. Nope, I'm going the other wrong way. Trying to get him to focus. Ty's guiding me. So just getting that different shape in those wings. And then basically what I'm going to have to do is I've created myself a few more larger gaps. So I'll have to fill, we dropped a wing. I'll have to fill those gaps, but that's going to, I'll glue all of this together. I won't do that right now. I'm going to set this one off to the side and kind of let his wings dry up a little bit. Because they are still a little dripping with a little bit of water. But we can, while he dries out, we can play with other minis and look at other things. So that's one of the things that we kind of always, I made a mess. We kind of always expect when we get a Reaper Mini that we're going to have a little bit of assembly. We're going to have a little bit of cleanup. One of the things that I always make sure I have is my mold scraper. And I had one. What this is going to allow me to do, or mold line scraper, I apologize. What that's going to allow me to do is right along this edge, it's not sharp enough to cut me or anything. But if I go along here and there's a rough edge right here, which I wouldn't normally care about because it's at the base. But this, I can take along that line and you can see it picking up those rough edges, and it just smooths it down to where it's a nice, easy, flat line. Where it really would matter for me for painting and such is right along this edge here. There's a line, and you can't see it now while it's, you know, just all white, but as soon as you go to dry brush and you hit that line, it's gonna pop out like you would not believe, and it doesn't look very good. It's like you got all this work done and then all of a sudden it feels like your paint job is ruined. Hi Sunbaran, welcome. So one of the things that I like to do is just make sure that all of my minis are nice and cleaned up before I paint anything. Obviously nothing is ever perfect, so I will go through and realize that I've been, you know, I'm halfway through painting and I missed a mold line. Well, I'll just clean it up and then I can kind of touch up that paint in that area. I don't really feel any others here, but you know, there is also other gaps I need to fill, so I'm gonna take care of those really quickly. And again, yeah, Jake, just straight out of the tube. It's just anywhere where I feel like there's a gap that just should not be there. You can use, as a matter of fact, I am going to use my paintbrush in this spot because it's just too tight for that to get in there. And this back behind his, that in the water. And it's really, it's just the separation of the different parts of the minis that as they cast them. This stuff does dry fairly quickly. I would, even that spot that we had done toward the beginning, I would be comfortable painting that right now, but I tend to like leaving it overnight if I can be patient enough. I'm not always that. But these do last a really long time. I bought both tubes at the same time. I'm gonna have to use my paintbrush again for that little corner. I bought both toothbrushes, good Lord. I'm like stuck on toothbrushes. Both tubes of this at the same time, and that was probably 6 months to a year ago. And it's just because you can see how very little I need. I don't recommend doing this with a brush that you like because you will tend to gunk it up fairly quickly. But especially if I have a bunch, I'll take like an old dry brush or something, which is what this is. So it coats. And I have a little bit extra on my brush, so I'm just bringing it over and filling another gap with it. And you don't have to fill gaps. You absolutely don't. That is a step you can skip. I've seen where I have skipped it and where I haven't, and I prefer to fill the gaps. I like how it looks like one big solid piece. It just, to me, it makes it finished. But you know how that is whenever you're making something and you make a mistake while you're doing it, and then that's like the only thing you can see after it's done, is like you just see that one mistake. I painted a painting where it was a big tornado, and I had this big sweeping grass and trees and all of this. It was just so much fun, and I was so in love with it. And then someone pointed out to me that one of the clouds looked like a T-Rex head. That's all I can see now. Every time I look at that painting, it's just that T-Rex head. Still love it, but it's a tornado with a T-Rex face. I have people making faces at me, guys. Sorry. So yeah, basically, I think all of the gaps on this guy are filled. So the next step I would do with this Reaper Mini is I would prime him as well. Just because of this type of plastic, it can not necessarily flake off like a metal mini does, but they tend to like run down. If you don't wash it off with hot soapy water before you start painting, especially, it's almost like it's got a clear coat that won't allow the paint to stick to the mini. One of the things I have found though is using a spray paint primer can make these plastic ones tacky and sticky, and it never seems to go away. I've done it a few times and realized that it was the paint doing it, and quickly realized that, well, that one's ruined, because I could never get it. I mean, I've left it sit for weeks and I could never get that tackiness to go away. It's a chemical reaction between this type of plastic, which can also happen with resin printed minis, so you want to be careful of that. Typically, like when you buy a Reaper Mini, you expect to do some assembly, you expect to do some cleanup. That's kind of the norm. If you are printing a resin mini for yourself, you're definitely gonna have cleanup. Here's one with all the supports left on. Now these are, normally I would remove the supports before I cure it, but I wanted to be able to handle the minis without having to have gloves on. So I went ahead and cured it with the supports on it. But straight off the printer, this is typically what it would look like. And they print upside down, so this is where it's attached to the plate and it builds down. So this is what it would look like coming off the build plate, and there's quite a bit of cleanup to do on this, just because you have to remove all those supports. And you can see some of them are already loose. These are medium supports. A lot of times I'll use heavier supports if the mini is really heavy and thick. This one wasn't too bad, but some of the ones that I have are, there he is, couldn't find him, really light and very, very fine detail. So I'll use a fine support, and those just snap right off. They'll just come right off. It almost looks like some of these are supports just because of the coloration of this, but this is actually stringy guts kind of pulling, because what this is a corrupt bartender, or I'm sorry, butcher. So he's like exploding from the center. It's but this piece that looks like it's just weird and hanging off, it's actually a handheld scythe. This piece is a butcher knife. This is, that looks like a fillet knife back there. It's hard to tell with the red resin sometimes, the details, but something like this would just be light support. But I wouldn't need to prime this or that red resin, either one. I don't typically need to prime them, so I don't. The one thing that I always make sure I do when I'm priming is get a very thin coat of the primer that I'm using, just so that I don't bulk up and cover any, put too many layers of the paint, and I'll lose the detail. Like this eye is, here's the eye, the white part of the eye, and then here is the iris, and then there's a slit for the pupil. If I put too many layers of paint in there, that just becomes one flat eyeball, which can still look cool because it looks, if you just do the whole thing kind of a foggy white, then it's like a blind beholder, but it can be fun. So if you're printing the resin, you've got your resin printer and you're doing it for yourself, then you're going to have to deal with all of these supports and getting them off. And you can see I'm really just picking them off. Some of the ones inside the mouth I'll clip out with a tool, but I don't ever force these. I just basically kind of feel them, or and just, I'm really putting very, very light pressure. I'm just barely moving these and they're just kind of popping away. If they give me any kind of resistance at all, I stop, and that's when I use my clippers, which seems to be the only thing I forgot to grab, but that's okay. And they just kind of break away. There, my lovely husband is going to go get me a set. There's underneath the printer in my office, there's a toolbox. Yeah. You'll see the open filament box is what I'm using. But if you're paying for someone else to print you a mini, print you anything, realistically speaking, it should come to you cleaned up. Now, you know, human nature and such. Here is my beautiful clippers. I love these things. Human nature, and I mean, you got to forgive anybody for making any mistakes or anything like that. I mean, you can see I've missed one or two inside this guy. But they're super simple to clip out. But you shouldn't have much of any cleanup unless that person has stated, you know, that they're not going, you know, the price doesn't include any kind of cleanup, then you would expect to get something that looks like this. But if you're paying someone to print them for you, typically they're going to be cleaned off for you and you'll get it like this. Now, you still may have to assemble, because in some cases, like this piece, it could be this. If this had printed separately, I would actually package it to you separately because I wouldn't want this to break in shipping. This piece is printed all in one. This is from Hero Forge. I actually got on and designed this little lady myself. But I mean, and you can see the bottom where it had supports and everything that just kind of popped away. That is one thing that I tend to see with resin printers, where the base of it can sometimes kind of curl up. And you can see this one is not really perfectly flat either, but it's still, they'll do their job. This guy will kill us and this girl will kill that. So yay, rawr. Anyway, sorry, I'm having too much fun. Clipping off the supports and cleaning them up is really, at that point, once that's all done, you're pretty much ready to paint this guy. And the supports are much easier to clean up before curing. I'm getting stabbed by these as they jump around. Like that. And I typically, like I said, I clean these before I cure them, just because they still have that a little bit of malleability, and they're not so fragile. That is something about resin that is that I'm not terribly fond of. Is you know, you're seeing me break this apart. This model is made from this same stuff, so I mean, I don't want to do it because it's a beholder and I don't want to make him mad at me, but I could probably yank one of these eyes and just snap it off backwards. Whereas if I'm taking this wing and I'm doing this, it's not breaking. If I threw this on the ground, I'm just going to pick it up and start going again. But if I threw this on the ground, he's going to break. But he's got so much cleanup underneath him. Good Lord. This is why I usually do this on a paper towel, because you can see the mess. And I usually, I do it right by my curing station, so that I can, basically I rinse them off and then I clip them, and then once they're dry from the rinse, then I put them in the UV curing light. But until they're at this point where they're cured, it's not really safe to touch them. So that's why like I said, I wanted to be able to do this part without gloves. So good Lord. They are literally going everywhere. They don't I mean, even when I'm clipping them when they're not cured, they still will kind of fly sometimes, but they don't usually fly this bad. Sometimes I'll just have to clip across this part too, just to get it loose. There we go. And our big dragon is almost dry. Sorry, I'm just watching the pieces fly everywhere. Looks like I got myself a little bit. There, we almost have him out now. And with this, I did do manual or automatic supports from the software, which I don't tend to like to do just because this guy's a little over supported. I usually go in and I'll do auto supports and then I'll kind of clean them up. Or if the artist has provided a supported file, I usually use that file and just leave the supports as they put them. It's usually, good grief, it usually works the best. It really helps whenever you're cleaning up like this, if you know exactly what the model is supposed to look like, because you can get a little clip happy and clip off a piece that was supposed to be there. I've done that a couple of times. Almost got him. There we go. Now, what's fun about this guy is this particular model sits down on his tentacles, his eye stalks, sorry, I said tentacles. He sits on his stalks. So rather than having any kind of other base, he's literally, this is the base. So I'm like, it's really kind of fun. He's got all these pieces in his mouth, but those aren't really adhered terribly well because they're so thin. I really just kind of knock around and they kind of fall out. So he is all cleaned up. No, he is not. Oops. Oh, piece right there. That is not supposed to be there. So he is all cleaned up and pretty much ready to paint at this point. Like I said, I don't need to prime him. You can if you want, but again, this is another one that I would not recommend using a spray primer. Either a brush-on primer or airbrush primer would be fine, but not like a spray paint sort of primer. Those can have a chemical reaction with these and make them tacky as well. So that is getting a printed resin one ready. And I need to clean up my little space again. Excuse me for a second, because that is messy. So we've gotten a Reaper ready with gap filling. Again, this would have to be primed before I paint it, which we're not going to do tonight because, like I said, we're just kind of talking about the different preparations. So we've done gap filling. We've gotten a resin cleaned up and ready to go, unless you've paid for it, and then it should come to you clean. Pay attention to that because you can see it's not a whole lot of fun to have to clean that up. This is the PLA. And this is a shield from a Dragon Kickstarter that I did. This shield, and then you can see the corresponding hole here. So it's a mounted dragon head. So I think it's 6 or 7 different ones. So it's actually my plan is to get them all printed out and get them painted. And then we're going to hang them in the living room for our trophies. But with the exception of having to come in here and clean the supports up some more on this, which I'm not really going to do. It's the same site kind of cleaning up that we just got through doing. But you can see that here, let me see, probably hear that better. You can hear the layers and you can see the layers in filament printing, especially, let's see, I think that should be in focus. Right up here, you can see the circles that it was making. So one of the ways that you can fix that is by sanding this to get a smooth finish. The only thing that you want to be careful of is not taking away those details. Another way you can do it is filling it with primer, just a nice light coat to where you kind of lose those lines. Excuse me, have a feeling that those lines are going to be so invisible once I paint this, especially considering where we're going to be hanging it. I don't think it'll be any kind of big deal. Actually, Sunbrand, I cannot recommend a grade for sanding yet because I haven't done it. This is the third thing I printed on filament. This is my little Buddha. That was my test print. And then I printed some laser parts for Tyler's Arturo. Ortur. I always say it wrong. And then this is the first piece that I painted or printed for me. So I'm not sure what sand grade I would need on this, but I'm probably not going to sand it in the first place. That's just not something that I think I need to do on this print. There is a couple of dice towers that I'm going to be printing. Those are going to be much more up close and in people's face, so I definitely want those layer lines to be gone. So I probably will sand those, and as soon as I figure that out, I'll let you guys know. But I can almost guarantee, just feeling them, it's going to be the lightest grit I can get my hands on. It's going to be so sensitive. I don't think it's going to take much at all. Let's see, where is my little file? No, that one won't work. I was going to test one of my little files, but I don't see it at the moment. So I don't think it's going to take much of anything. I really think that just a simple light coat of paint would fill those gaps in the first place. So we'll test that in here in a few minutes, though. So that is... Buddha's running away. So I think that is the gist of all the different types of minis that I have here in front of me. I think we've kind of gone over everything like that. This guy is ready to be glued. So my favorite glue is actually the super glue. I don't necessarily have a brand that I prefer, one or the other. What I do want is always the gel control with the twist off lid and these two little nozzles right here, because all I have to do is squeeze here to get a tiny little bit of glue. So it just is so much control. And it's, you know, just a little dab will do ya. It's, my dragon's in the way. It's just a dot of glue right inside there. And then squeezing his tail. And I am putting as much pressure on this as I possibly can. Because the tighter fit I can get on this, the less gap I have to fill is really what it boils down to. And it is super glue, so it does go fairly quickly. Oh, nope, not that quick though. This will be another one that I will break off the other pieces while I'm holding that. This will be another one that I will have to prime before I paint it, but that won't be that big of a deal either. And depending on the the scheme that I decide to go, that'll kind of determine what color I'm going to prime it with. So that is the problem. You see the dot that I made in there is still a perfect dot, because that's not actually, this piece is not actually going all the way. That's why it's not. So I'm just going to put a dot on here and try again. Let's see if that works. But depending on the scheme that I want to go with this guy, if I decide he's going to be fire or ice or the forest dragon or whatever I decide to paint him, that will determine what color I will prime him. So if I want him to be a dark and scary one, I'll prime him, you know, black. If I want him to be on the lighter shade, I'll go ahead and prime him white. And if he's kind of a middle tone, then I tend to prime in gray then. See, there you go. Now that works when you put it on right. And the legs, what I tend to do is get that one in place, flip it over, and get the other in place. Sorry if you guys can't see past my fingers here. And then I will, you know, two birds, one stone sort of thing, and just pinch. Feel free to ask any questions at any time. Happy to answer anything, even if it's completely off subject. Because that's the natural progression of the conversation, right? Also known as a tangent, but I prefer my way of saying it. And because this hand has two very far apart, I went ahead and put two little dots. I have a tendency to put too much glue, or did have a tendency to put too much glue, and it would seep out. And then I'd glue my fingers together, and then I'd cry, and it's not so much fun. I think everybody knows that, who's ever messed with super glue. It hurts. All right, let me get this out of my way. I just have like this massive mess is what I feel like. I never work like this when I'm painting. I don't have all of these things all around me, but today's not about painting, so I'm like, yeah, everything. All right. Oh, you guys might not be able to see the mess, but I can see the mess and I can feel the mess. All right, get his little head in there. Ow, spiky little thing. So one of my favorite things to do is actually basing. So I do have his base picked out. I'm just making sure I've got the fit right before I put the wings in. And he does have two connection points, so I'm going to hit both of those points with the glue. I do have his base picked out and what he's going to actually sit on, which he doesn't need a base. He does have the feet rests that Reaper put on there. But like I said, my favorite thing to do is basing, so I'm going to show you a few little quick tricks that I do with that once we have him glued together. And you can see that this wing has relaxed a little bit, but if you remember, it was straight up. So now we still have a little of that wrinkle, and you can see it's still a little malleable. So putting it back in the ice water would help keep it more in that frame, but I just wanted a little bit of that wiggle, and I think that's enough for me right now. There's some that I like. I even cut out the fleshy bits in between and then replaced it with clear resin And of course, as soon as I did all that work, because I wanted it to be an ice dragon, so I wanted clear, icy wings. As soon as I did all that work, they came out with a clear version of it. I'm like, really? I decapitated him. I had just waited a little bit longer, I wouldn't have had to do all that work.
Jake has 2 questions.
2 questions. Where did you get the Dragon Mini? Does the filler you use do well if you need to fill in a large space? Yes and no. This particular dragon that I'm holding, I just got on Amazon. I think Ty has a link that he can put in chat for the dragon miniature. You can get it on Reaper's website as well. So Ty will put that link in the chat here in a second. Get his head back on there. No, for a large gap, Jake, I wouldn't use this. No, he hadn't put the links in yet, so you didn't miss it, Jake. No, for a large gap, if you wanted to do something where you were removing something and, like, you know, taking off an arm or something like that, green stuff actually makes a compound where it's one is blue and one is yellow, and then you mix them together, and it will make it to where you can actually mold with it. And so that's what I would use for that. Like I had a metal mini that was from Sunbrand, help me out here. Who's that? Sword something. I'm losing them. It's this mini, but it's not this. It's this brand. I can't remember the brand of it. It's what? I'm sorry. Oh, here it is.
Is that when you linked?
Dark Sword. Sorry. Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, sir. Sunbrand, you win something. I don't know what yet, but I will get you something. Yes. Dark Sword is who made this mini, and at one point I needed a bard that was a rat, but the only bard that I could find was a fox. So I got that the green stuff that I was telling you about being able to mix it together, and I built a longer nose and taller ears to make him look like a rat instead of a fox. So that would be what I would recommend for very large holes and very large gaps. It'll just save you time and energy and sanity, because this stuff, it is fairly liquid. So if you tried to fill something very large with this, you would have to do layer after layer after layer. So it just would, it would not be a whole lot of fun, to be honest. But it would work. It's just not how you should do it. And if I can get Ty to do a little search on Amazon and maybe find the green stuff, the moldable stuff.
Yeah.
So as far as this guy's base goes, I have just a bucket of bases, just random shapes and everything. And in my bucket, I found this oval one, which fits his body very well. It makes it to where I can put his face and everything be, you know, on the base really fits just his flow, basically. So one of my favorite things to do is, rather than using this base as it's meant to make, you can see the ridge and everything, I like to flip them over. Because now I have this pre-built ridge that will hold any of the glue that I want to use to glue anything down. So, I mean, you're never going to see all of this anyway, and it doesn't matter one way or the other which way is up or down. For something like this, I use PVA glue, and it just on Amazon. it is ideal for paper and things like that. So it's very gentle on everything. So I use, and it's not that expensive and it goes a really long way. So I'm literally going to make a mess, pour a little bit of glue there. Haha, didn't make a mess. Nope, made a mess, got it on my thumb. And I'm going to spread it around with a brush that I, don't really care about. And it stays, it takes a while to cure, so you've got a lot of working time with it, basically, is one of the things that I really like about it. So I'm just kind of covering and you can see it's kind of peeling away in places. It doesn't really matter because once I put my stuff in there, it'll kind of cure it or push it around anyway. So, and it does just wash off with water. So that's also another really nice thing about it. But because I've flipped it over, I have this ridge where anything that I add to this is not going to go over. And then I just have a mix of sand and little pieces of wood and such. It's just outdoor stuff. And it just makes for a really good little base. Except because I am thinking about what I am doing and not just doing it, I'm not thinking of putting it on a piece of parchment or paper or something like that. And I just overfill it so that it can really just settle down in that glue. Just kind of spread it around. And a lot of this is going to come up and come off. But another thing that I can do is add more glue to the top if I wanted to get more in there and get more of it to stay. Right now, let me just pour that off and you can see I'll just get a really light layer of it, but that's not, if that's what you wanted, that's fine. But for me, I want more of it. So what I'll do is I'll add more glue to it. Another way of doing this, and I'm just using the paper to pour it right back into my little cup. Another way of doing this is to take your sand mixture or whatever mixture you want to use and put the PVA directly in here and mix it all together and then kind of smush it around your base. Let me get all of this stuff out of the way and I can show you. I did a base of, I'm working on a base I'm working on a, words are super failing me tonight. Diorama. Good grief. And I did this base in this method, but what I did was I mixed up my dirt. I put the same, it's this exact same sand. And what I did was I mixed in the PVA into a cup with the sand with some brown paint to make it look like mud. And then I just kind of smushed it around the base where I wanted it. I mean, it's on there. It's not going anywhere. I just glued the rocks down, glued some little random plants around where I wanted them. And then what this diorama is for is that's random. This ox is pulling this cart. So it will sit like this, will be the finished product once I get it all finished painted. But what I did was I took the wagon wheels and attached them to the base of this and then drug it through to make the track. So it's actually the wagon tracks going through here. And all this is put on is a wooden frame from, I think I got this from Walmart. It's just one of those frames that you're supposed to put it up on the wall and put stuff on it. But I'm like, that's the perfect size for a diorama. But that's how you can turn this same exact sand into a mud look. What I'm planning on doing with that is once I have everything in place, I'm going to take my PVA glue and mix it, exactly, Oregon Trail. I'm going to mix it 50-50 with water and put it in a spray gun or a pump spray, and I will mist that over the entire diorama, and then take snow, or the fake snow that you can buy. I don't have the snow right here with me, but this is, foliage. And just sprinkle it over it to make it look like it's a dusting of snow has gone over it. So that one should turn out pretty good. But anyway, like I said, I want more coverage here, so I'm going to add more glue. And I'm going to leave it thicker in places on purpose so that it will kind of make mounds. And it will pretty much settle most of it. Sorry, dysentery. It'll kind of level out, but not perfectly, and I'm okay with that. So the only thing that I make sure that I do is push the mini in before this is completely dry. And see this mess that I'm making? That's why I do it on this paper, so that I don't really have to be careful. And the PVA glue will let it sit. I mean, will take for probably 24 hours to completely cure. So I have lots of time to work with it. I have lots of time to add to it and all that other kind of stuff. And it does dry completely clear. It's basically Elmer's glue, but better. So I don't even mind doing that sort of thing, because you won't see that. It does go, I've used it so much, it does go completely clear. But now I have a sandy woodland area that I can just place him where I like him. Excuse my head going in weird positions. Just making sure I like. And I'm going to press him down so that I make a groove for his feet to go back into. So I can kind of see where his feet go. I don't have this weird area. You see, I took a bunch of the glue off, which is fine because that's what I need to do, is create that groove for myself. You probably hear my dog coughing. Let me clean this up real quick. But now I've got a really quick base made, really simple, really easy, and it's really cool. I'm happy. Now, like I said, I'll dump that off when that glue is cured, but I'm gonna leave it sit as long as possible, just so that it simply, turn my light off, sorry. Just so that it will absorb as much as I possibly can. Yes, Sunbaran, I'm struggling not to say Angie. If I wanted to put something in there, like a tree or anything like that, what I would have done was put that down before I put the sand, basically because I want... Let me grab another plate real fast. Another base, which I can't see one. Oh, never mind, I found it. So basically what I would do if I wanted to do something like putting a tree or a rock like I did this other one, what I would do is put that down first. I have rocks right here. Spin around and grab a rock. So what I would do is glue this rock into place, or I would put just the tiniest bit of sand maybe, but really what I do is I glue this rock down, and then I will use a stick. I just grab a bunch of random sticks. I have these, and I have barbecue skewers. They are so useful to have around you that I would put the glue down, and then I would push the glue right up. Let me see if I can get that at an angle. I would push the glue into these crevices under the rock so that I could then make sure I get the sand in there as well. things like bushes and are not heavy enough to really worry about, but if I had a tree that was going to be substantially weighted, I would make sure to glue it down directly to the base itself, not to the sand, because it'll just peel that glue completely away. Okay. So let me get out this other big giant base I did. That's kind of what I did here. Is this rock is glued down first, and then you can see here that I've kind of shoved in the stuff underneath. I'm gonna have to switch to the other camera to catch this. Let's see if we can. Ty, will you let me know when this gets into focus up here, or if I've got it in the right spot?
That looks pretty good.
Okay, so right in here, what I did was I glued this rock down, then put all the sand, and then I set this one on top, but I glued it directly to this one so that everything is stuck down to this. So, I mean, it's just like I said, everything is glued down. It's not coming off. It doesn't matter how I turn this. It's stuck. It's there. So, and if you think about it, in nature, I mean, rocks are not sitting above the dirt, they're sitting in the dirt. So if you had a bunch of things that were all up and above what they were supposed to be in, just like having these ridges down here for the tire tracks and everything, it wouldn't look right if there wasn't mud pushed away from where the tire was going, because that's what happens. But all of these little plants are just so light that they just don't, it doesn't matter if they're glued on top or underneath or anything else. These ones that have twigs, what I tend to do is take the twig and kind of shove it down into the dirt like it's growing up out of it. These little baby rocks you can see dotted in random places, like that one's a little loose. They are glued just directly on top because they're very light and they don't need to be glued underneath. But that is a basic overhaul of how you treat different minis from different materials, and a little start of an awesome guy, which I think what we will do is I will get this guy primed and gap filled and everything else, and then maybe next week we'll go ahead and paint him up, because it would be fun to paint a dragon. So you know, do all the social media things, follow, like cryptmonkeystudios.com. We are going to be missing a week in July. Our son will be here. He is currently in the military, so he is coming home for his summer break, basically. So we will be hanging out and having a blast with him. So we will be missing a week in July. But other than that, we will see you next time.